I am at the Science Gallery, Bengaluru, and I've come to see their new exhibition on the history of science and technology in my Bengaluru. I'm literally getting the goosebumps standing here. Those of you who have been on my walks know that I really love the history of science and technology, and there could be no better exhibit to speak about our history than this plane. Now, aviation buffs among you know what's special about this plane. But for those of you who don't, here is the story. The year is 1942. Most of India is involved with the Quit India movement and related civil disobedience movements. But here in Bengaluru, something very different is happening. The princely state of Mysore, which has always been a pioneer in the industrialization of pre-independence India, actually sets up an aircraft factory, HAL, by inviting an entrepreneur, Seth Walchand Hirachand, to Bangalore to set up this factory. And in July 1941, the first plane, an assembled American aircraft, takes off in Bangalore. This is a dramatic event, and more so because in December 1941, something really important happened. The Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, America entered the war. And between 1942 and 1945, Bangalore became an important strategic allied base as they defended India from an imminent Japanese attack. It was a dramatic time in Bangalore. There was lots of aviation activity that was going on. But when the war ended and HAL was given back to the US Air Force, to the Mysore government, that's when India's leadership began to think seriously about how post-independence India would create an industrial base. Because, independence and democracy is all very well, but you need to defend it. And that is when this plane suddenly became very important. Let's go back to 1947. India has just got independence, and unfortunately, there is an immediate war in Kashmir. And not just in India, the neighborhood goes into conflict. The communists win in China, the Korean War begins, and the Cold War officially begins. It's a very dangerous time. And India realizes that they need to come up with the proper defense strategy to defend the country against attack. And as I often say, if you want to solve for India, a good place to start is Bengaluru. And I'm going to tell you about two important people, among many others, who played a critical role in helping a young independent nation achieve Atmanirbhar in aircraft production. My first hero is V.M. Ghatge, a pioneer in the Indian aerospace industry. He did his PhD in Germany, came back to India and joined HAL. But because there was too much war effort going on between 1942 and 45, he moved to the Indian Institute of Science, where he set up the aerospace engineering department and began research in the design of planes. And once the war ended and HAL came back to us, Mr. Ghatge joined HAL and set up the design department, where he designed, along with his team, India's first military trainer aircraft, the HT-2, and that's the plane I'm standing next to. This was the first plane that was designed, developed and manufactured in India by Indians for Indians. Now, designing a new plane is one thing, but who is going to fly it? So my other hero is Captain Jimmy Munshi, who was the chief test pilot of HAL. He was an incredible guy. Just to go back again to 1945, the US has given lots of planes called the Liberators and others to the British to fight the war. And when the war ends, they don't want to leave those planes in India. So there's actually an effort by the RAF to destroy the surviving planes at the aircraft depot in Kanpur. Now, interestingly, some people in India realize that those planes can actually be rescued. A team from HAL, headed by a man called Mr. Yellappa, who goes to Kanpur to look at all these hulks which are lying actually condemned as junk, and they discover that 42 of these Liberator bombers can actually be rescued. And they begin a rescue mission. They patch it up, but then who's going to fly these planes from Kanpur to Bangalore, because they need to be brought to HAL, the only place in Asia that can overhaul and maintain these planes. And so Captain Jimmy Munshi of HAL raises his hand. They have tried to get many American pilots to come and fly these planes, but they are charging too much. And Captain Jimmy Munshi, the true patriot, says, I am well paid in HAL. I will do this for free. And an incredible story of 42 Liberator bombers flown from Kanpur to Bangalore after they were being patched up. They were actually overhauled in HAL, and they joined the Indian Air Force. So the Indian Air Force actually had bombers made out of discarded and damaged bombers that the Americans left behind. So that was Captain Munshi's claim to fame. So when the HT-2 trainer was designed and developed in Bangalore and time came for the first flight in August 1951, Captain Munshi raised his hand and said, I can fly this. This is simple compared to the Liberator. And in a famous event on August 5th, 1951, a test flight was carried out of the H-22 trainer in HAL. It was a dramatic day in India's aerospace history, and a day that we should all actually celebrate, because that was the day India had its own plane, I repeat, designed, developed and manufactured in India by Indians for Indians. What I find most fascinating about the H-22 trainer is that it served the Indian Air Force for the next 30 years till the 1980s. So not only was it the first, it actually sustained for a very long time. But there's a larger story going on here. And that's why I believe this is the first exhibit of this new exhibition at the Science Gallery, because this trainer embodies what is called the military industrial academic complex of India. And Bangalore is the place where it all really began. If you just think about it, this trainer was actually used for the Indian Air Force for a new country. It was designed and developed initially at the Indian Institute of Science Aerospace Engineering Department and was produced in HAL. And you needed all three of these to come together at one place to actually produce it. And so Bangalore's role in the history of science, technology and industry of India cannot be understated. And I'm excited about going into the Science Gallery, Bengaluru, to find out more about this story. Join me as we go and take a look.